Hello everybody, Rob here, and coming up on R&B Reviews, the summer blockbuster season is now officially over, so it's now time for me to give my report card on what I thought was the best, the worst, and the most disappointing movies from this past summer. Overall, this past summer of 2012, I thought had very enjoyable movies. I ended up seeing about 18 of them, and I recommended just about all of them, while there were a handful of disappointments and just a couple of bad ones. So I'm going to be doing a top 6 best of movies from this summer, and then later I will do a top 5 combination of the worst and disappointments one later on. Alright, so let's start with the best, shall we? Now I'll try and keep this video and my reasons short on why each of these movies I thought were the best. Let's start at number 6. Now this movie, it seems to be splitting audiences up, but I really enjoyed it. It's Lawless, starring Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf as bootlegging brothers during the Depression era Virginia. The story is a Chicago special agent comes and he wants a cut of the brothers' profits, but when they refuse, it causes a violent and gory sort of battle of wits. What impressed me about Lawless was that I felt like I was in that time period from the way the movie was lit and seeing all the old-time ads on the buildings as well as how the characters look and dressed. I thought the movie was very well acted, even though Guy Pearce did kind of do a hammy performance as the villain, and I thought Shia LaBeouf gave probably his best performance out of his whole career as the younger brother Jack, who is trying to live up to his brother's reputations. I felt the movie could have been just a little bit longer in order to allow some character development from Maya Wasikowska as Jack's love interest, and Gary Oldman is in this movie as a gangster hiding out in town. I wish we could have gotten some more character development from him as well. But overall, I thought Lawless was a well-shot and well-acted film. Number 5 on my list is Bully, a heart-wrenching documentary from director Lee Hirsch about different kinds of bullying taking place across the country through schools as well as in towns. It also shows that bullying affects the parents as they have to put up with their children coming back hurt from school, and oftentimes the school administrators seem to be at a loss at how to deal with these problems. For one story, I was surprised that seeing bullies acting out on the bus and the bus driver just not doing anything, all while the camera was recording them. The documentary also shows that bullying has gone beyond the playground and is seen on the internet, and some schools are trying to find ways to curb bullying while others resort to methods that are just out of date and just don't work. If there is a flaw with this film, I think it's Hirsch will oftentimes have the camera go in and out of focus while interviewing a subject for apparently no reason. And there were a few times that the camera could really have used a tripod. And also the kids that are used for this film live in rural areas. I mean, where are the kids who live in the cities and perhaps come from well-educated and perhaps even richer families? Bullying is moving, and I think that this is a movie that must be seen, and sadly this one did not get a wide release, and on top of that it was given an R rating from the MPAA. Number 4. The Avengers, a fun popcorn superhero action flick that got the summer off to a very great start. While the story was a bit thin, The Avengers was full of interesting characters, each of them having a moment of their own, as well as with the rest of the ensemble. There is a lot that goes on in this movie, but all of it really connects. Usually in movies when there's a lot of characters, some tend to get pushed off to the side, but writer-director Joss Whedon has made sure that everybody has a chance to shine. Each is different from the other, especially Captain America, who is used to following orders, while Iron Man, he prefers to, shall we say, do things on his own and doesn't really, follow orders. I really enjoyed the dialogue from Whedon, including funny quirks, and I think it was very good at exploring the characters as outcasts in a way. I think also what helped is each superhero had at least a movie out before this one came out, and I think that helped prevent an origin story for everybody for this film, which I think would have dragged the film down. But The Avengers was very entertaining, and that's why it's on my list as well. Number 3, The Dark Knight Rises, a great ending to the Batman trilogy starring Christian Bale and directed by Christopher Nolan. While I did not think this was quite as good as the first 2 films, it nonetheless was a fascinating movie to watch, and I was never bored by it. Thanks to a great story, a satisfied ending, and very good quality characters. Batman does not have superpowers, and sometimes he feels unsure of himself. Unlike the old Batman movies from Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher, or even the Avengers that I just mentioned, Nolan's Batman films he sets his film in a realistic world as opposed to a stylized comic book one, making the film feel close to home, including stuff about economic status of the rich and poor in Gotham City, and also the villain Bane shooting up public places like a football stadium and a stock market exchange, which may make some audience members uncomfortable. I also liked how Tim Hardy kept Bane from being a hammy villain. He plays the role very quiet, and it makes the role more threatening. The Dark Knight Rises definitely was one of the best movies of the summer, and I think people will continue to watch it over and over again, picking up new things that they may not have gotten from the first viewing. Number 2 on my list is another movie that seemed to be causing a gap between people who enjoyed this movie and those that didn't, as well as people arguing whether this movie should be considered a prequel to the Alien movies or not. Prometheus is Ridley Scott's first science fiction movie since 1982's Blade Runner, and while the topic of whether God exists or not has been done over and over again, and there were a few plot holes in this particular script, I was impressed by the look of the movie. Scott is one of the very few directors left that relies on actually having sets built, making me feel like I was part of the crew as they explore a planet full of caves and to discover if it contains information about where humanity came from, and it does not rely too much on CGI. I thought it was a thrill, and it didn't really feel like I was in a movie theater, and I felt like I was with everybody else. It also created mystery and unsettling atmosphere, and I think Prometheus offered good scares, surprises, a few gross-out moments, and it does ask the audience to think and to ask questions while watching it. The characters in this movie are not black and white, as they each have a shade of gray about them. And another wow factor, great shots and very good locations. I saw this movie in 3D, and usually I don't go to 3D movies because it's often just, you know, a gimmick to try to get the studios to try to get more money from people, but I thought it enhanced the story, and it was not just a gimmick, as I said, like many films do. Alright, the number 1, what I thought was the best movie of the summer, and there will be, I imagine there will be a few people scratching their heads going, what? But no, for me, the number 1 movie, best movie this past summer was The Amazing Spider-Man, starring Andrew Garfield. Now, this movie has a comic book feel like The Avengers, but yet it feels like it could take place in a realistic dark world like The Dark Knight Rises. While I, too, was not exactly happy that the series was going to be rebooted so soon, I did find myself enjoying this movie a little bit more than the Tobey Maguire trilogy. The movie was directed by Mark Webb, who made 500 Days of Summer, and unlike other music video directors who go on to direct feature films, he knows how to tell a story, and he knows how to guide the actors and to use the visuals only to enhance the story and not take it over. Unlike the previous Spider-Man movies, this one is more of a character-driven drama than an action superhero movie, with many characters wanting to fill an empty void, like Peter Parker, who goes through pain when his uncle dies, and he wants to know what happened to his parents who abandoned him many years ago, or Dr. Connors, who is missing an arm and he wants to replace it, and unfortunately it leads to his experiments lead him to become the Lizard. Let's see, and unlike many other superhero movies, we get to spend quite a bit of time with Parker discovering his new superpowers rather than resorting to, you know, those montages where you see that go on for a couple of minutes, where you get to see him, you know, figure his powers out. And also, I think Andrew Garfield does a good job at making Parker shy and awkward, but making his Spider-Man confident and courageous. I would argue that his Spider-Man is probably a little bit more better than Tobey Maguire's. Mark Webb, if there's a fault with this movie, Mark Webb is not an action director. The fights are definitely the weakest part of the movie. Webb, I mean, they're just not spectacles. Like, if you're going in there expecting Avengers or Spider-Man style action fights, you're definitely not going to get it with this one. And I do wish that this movie did have a little bit more suspense in there. But no doubt, the comic book superhero action movies are probably going to be the best remembered ones from 2012. Alright, so here's my recap of what I thought were the best movies of this past summer. Number 6, Lawless. Number 5, Bully. Number 4, The Avengers. Number 3, The Dark Knight Rises. Number 2, Prometheus. And number 1, The Amazing Spider-Man. Alright, I'm going to be doing another video shortly afterwards where I do my top 5 disappointing and worst movies of the summer. In the meantime, if you want to give me what you thought were your favorite or what you thought were the best movies from the summer, go ahead and post your comments, or if you want to tell me why you disagree with my list, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching.